morning and welcome to the next episode of DATAMINDZ, where science and art converge. I'm your host, Gregory Ashe, and today we're going to be talking about data and pretty much all things data. We'll start off with what is the difference between first-party data and third-party data. So first-party data would be if you are an end-user business and you are collecting data, whether it be in your storefront, whether it be online, through some type of mobile application direct to you. That is all first-party data. Third-party data would be when there is a agency or some third party collecting that data and then reselling it in the marketplace for additional targeting, conquesting, and things of that nature. So we're going to start off with first-party data and some of the key things that you as a business need to do with your first-party data. One of the biggest things that I personally see in not only the companies that I consult for, but also obviously in day-to-day business at M1 Data is the lack of proper care and hygiene to first-party data. One of the biggest statistics that goes unknown is roughly 31 million Americans move annually. So when you look at that total population, probably 9-ish%, 9.5% of the total population moves annually. So if you look at your database and say you have 10,000 records in that database, that means 1,000 of those people have likely moved in the last year. So when you factor that into how much money you're spending on a weekly or monthly or quarterly basis marketing to your internal database, 10% of that is just going by the wayside. On a direct mail side, if you're looking at direct mail costs, depending on how advanced the packages that you're sending, stock, postage, if you're sending first class mail, it could be anywhere from 50 cents per mail piece all the way up to $1.75 a mail piece, even $2 a mail piece, depending on it. And $2 at 1,000 folks when you're mailing to 10,000 is $2,000 a waste of money. Okay, so it really adds up quick. Factor in average lifespan of a consumer email. 1 out of 3 consumers switches to a new email in 180 days or 6 months. So when you look at 1 out of 3 every 6 months, now you look out a year on your 10,000 folks that you have in your database, and those are a ton of emails that you're sending that are either going unread and affecting your metrics. They're bouncing, potentially causing gray listing or blacklisting issues. Phone numbers, cell phones. I believe the statistic, not 100% sure, I forgot to fact check this one, but I believe it's 1 out of 4 Americans change their cell phone every 6 months. So that's 25%. Most people who are opting in these days are going to leave a cell phone number, obviously massive switch away from landlines. So therefore, if you're doing any type of calling, if you're doing any form of, opt-in text messaging, or SMS text messaging, then again, massive amount of revenue that is being spent for people who no longer have that phone number, improper person, disconnected. It's just a ton of marketing dollars that are being wasted, and it's really just not focused on. It's something that is extremely overlooked. There's plenty of companies out there that offer, simple NCOA and CAS services, NCOA meaning National Change of Address, in order to get updated addresses. You could be marketing to Mary Smith, who used to be a great customer, but maybe she moved 450 miles away. Depending on your business type, if you're a brick and mortar store, the likelihood is Mary's not, going to drive 450 miles to come back to your store. So that's, wasted ad revenue. Third-party data, most of your third-party marketers, I want to say to you, follow great hygiene practices and update their data quarterly. If they're in the business, at least that's what they should be doing. However, we do all know and probably have unfortunately, ran across a company that doesn't update their data. So make sure if you are seeking third-party data, you're asking hygiene questions. How often their files updated? What are they updating What update processes do they use? Is it, just simple, NCOA and CAS certification? Do they move to what's known as progressive change of address? Do they do electronic change of address for email addresses to say, hey, Mary Smith used to have marysmith@yahoo.com. Now she's marysmith at gmail.com. And then what type of, phone hygiene services do they offer, if they offer phone hygiene services? Most of your data hygiene companies will cover, the whole gamut of contact level data, whether it be email, cell phone, address, and things of that nature. The next thing is kind of part and parcel. So it would be data standardization and data deduplication. So one of the other big things that we see is that the same individual will sit in a database as three technically different people, because that information isn't standardized. And this is where, certified address standardization, otherwise known as CAS, comes huge into play. So for instance, you have an e-commerce site and Mary Smith buys a product, let's say women's apparel. She buys a sweater. She's filling out the form and she enters her address as 123 space N dot Main Street. Mary Smith comes back 3 weeks later. She's looking to buy another sweater. She loved the one that she received, but this time she puts in 123 North Main Street. Well, your database registers Mary Smith as a separate person, or maybe your database keys on email address, and maybe it's a little bit more likely that she gets the same identifier. But this duplication in databases, if you're doing any form of direct mail, well, that's two mail pieces now that you've sent to Mary Smith at, whatever your cost per mail piece is. And again, more wasted dollars. Maybe Mary Smith uses two different email addresses. Maybe she uses marysmith@yahoo.com, and then she uses her work email, msmith@abccompany.com. Even if you were keying in on email address, now Mary Smith is, two different records. So data standardization and data manipulation to cause cross-referencing are, things that definitely need to be done in order to maintain and keep the cleanest database possible. There's companies out there that create, individual keys, they create family keys or even household keys or address level keys in order to give you multiple different ways to segment in and tie individuals together in order to ensure that all of Mary Smith's information is going to stay in a single data record, and to make sure that you're not sending three emails to Mary Smith, or you're not sending three mail pieces to Mary Smith. Obviously, with data standardization, it also makes your deduplication process significantly easier. If you're using keys, obviously you can dedupe at a key level rather than being dependent on, say, a first name, last name, address, city, state, zip type duplication, or an email address duplication. Obviously, they're looking for exact matches there. There's also some companies that will venture to use what's referred to in the industry as, fuzzy logic, or what that equates to is, it's a 90% match or a 95% match or an 88% match, whatever threshold they decide to put on it from a percentage match standpoint. And obviously that adds, a bit of a wild card to it. If you have two individuals with, common names or similar information, obviously you could, end up accidentally deleting a customer, which obviously you don't want to. It's hard enough to gain a customer. It's easier to keep one than it is to replace one. So just some real simple steps that you can do to improve data quality within your database. Another best practice is to use web form validation, and this is especially for e-commerce companies or companies that predominantly operate online or via mobile apps. There's so many different tools out there that you can use for web form validation while the consumer is in the process of checkout or subscription. And web form validation goes through, address validation, email validation, phone number validation, geolocation validation. really essentially almost anything that you're collecting on a web form, with the exception of survey-related questions, specifically around contact level information, can actually be validated in real time while the individual is filling out a form, which will allow for a much cleaner input into your database, again, whether it be first party and or third party. So into that, you can even get further in the validation. Most validation is more at a quote unquote syntax level. However, there are web form validations out there that will, in real time validate that user's email address provided is in fact a good and deliverable email. A lot of first-party companies do this through a double opt-in process. They'll send some type of confirmation email asking for email verification in order to ensure that individual was the one that opted in and somebody didn't typo an email address, which is absolutely a good way. But I can also tell you personally, as a consultant, I've seen a ton of double opt-in email systems for validation that have gray listings or black listings that aren't delivering email to the inbox. They're more so going to the junk mail. If this is something that your company is experiencing, using web form validation could stop a lot of the issues that you're seeing in your mail system that is mailing your double opt-ins. Again, all of these are best practices. Obviously, they all come with some level of investment. If you're a company and you're not investing in data hygiene, I assure you, you're spending more money elsewhere. I truly believe that the investment for web form validation is something that every company should do. Depending on your capabilities, depending on how many opt-ins you're receiving, is obviously going to depend on your cost here. But in the grand scheme of things, it is significantly cheaper to do it in the beginning than it is to do it after the fact. Not that NCOA or CAS certification or email validation or phone validation is really expensive. It's just when you look at the cost of it, it's cheaper to do upfront. Pretty much like anything. If you're going to do work on your house and you have two different projects you want to do and they bleed into each other, you don't want to do one and then do another. You kind of want to do them together, as you're going to save, money in the long run. Same thing kind of really goes with your data. So I could probably go on all day long about data and different techniques. Again, I try and keep this podcast between 10 and 12 minutes. I want it to be, something you can listen to while you're eating your breakfast or on your short drive to the office in the morning. So we're going to wrap this episode up today. Again, please send any questions you have or any topics that you want me to cover to myquestion@dataminds.com. I'll do my best to answer it. I had a ton for me to discuss data hygiene. I kind of held off on it. Main reason is it was a big topic that I discussed while I did the Drive podcast with Jason Harris. Didn't really want to overlap him. After thinking about it, though, his audience and my audience aren't necessarily, there's not a large overlap there. So I wanted to make sure that I took care of the folks that were constantly sending me messages and emails. So you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in a week or so with the next episode.